Young tech millionaire finally reunites with the nurse who once saved his life, only to discover she's now carrying his child. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Ryan Thompson, 27, blinked against the harsh white glow of the hospital room's fluorescent lights. It felt surreal. 2 weeks ago, he'd been brimming with excitement, celebrating the latest update on his revolutionary smartphone app, a creation that transformed him from a bright-eyed programmer into a tech millionaire nearly overnight. But then came the accident, a wild spin of adrenaline during an extreme mountain biking course. He lost control on a precarious slope, plummeted off the track, and crashed with bone-jarring force against unforgiving rocks. Everything afterward blurred into dark flashes and jumbled voices until he woke up here, in this pristine hospital bed with monitors beeping around him. Weak, battered, and confronted with the knowledge that he'd been comatose for 2 entire weeks, Ryan tried to gather fragments of memory. He recalled the paramedics' frantic voices, the twisting ambulance ride to the emergency department, and then nothingness. Now, each breath tasted like antiseptic and carried a swirl of gratitude and relief. He was alive. And perhaps more shocking than that, as the sedation ebbed, he realized he wasn't alone. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," said a soothing voice. A young nurse, perhaps in her early 20s, stood at his side. She wore the standard scrubs, but there was a brightness in her eyes that seemed to soften the sterile edges of the hospital. "I'm Hannah, your nurse. We're relieved you've finally woken up." Her voice had a gentle quality that reached him more than any medication. He tried to respond, but his throat felt raw. Only a rasp emerged. She brought him a plastic cup of water, offering small sips that cooled his parched lips. He studied her in the momentary hush. There was a kindness in her posture. Though he'd only just awoken, he sensed she'd been here often, watching over him. Nurse Hannah Williams. She was 24, newly graduated, though from the confidence in her tone, one might think she had years of experience. He would soon learn that she'd played a role far more important than any formulaic hospital duties. She'd practically helped save his life when the doctors had almost given up hope of him coming out of the coma. In the hours that followed, doctors drifted in and out, administering neurological checks, adjusting his IV lines, and asking him to move his limbs. Ryan tried flexing his fingers, rotating his ankles, blinking against the blinding penlight that tested his pupils. But in between these evaluations, Hannah remained a constant presence, diligently taking notes on his chart, giving him words of encouragement each time he winced in pain. There was something in her gaze, empathy, curiosity, understanding. He couldn't place it yet, but whenever she smiled, it brought warmth to the lonely hush of the ward. At first, he thought it was mere professional politeness. Later, he would realize that behind her kindness was a genuine spark of concern, even protectiveness, as if she was personally invested in his recovery. Ryan's progress advanced in micro steps, a slight improvement in reflexes, a stronger response to stimulus, the ability to sip water on his own. Even the gentle action of raising his arms above his chest felt monumental. He caught glimpses of his reflection in the metal tray, unkempt hair, a bruised jawline, eyes bloodshot from strain. It felt humbling. Just months ago, he'd been the picture of unstoppable vitality, building his tech empire with unstoppable zeal. Hannah coaxed him through physical therapy exercises in the hospital corridor, helping him shuffle step by step when he first left his bed. Each time he faltered, she'd give him that calm assurance, as though all that mattered in that moment was that he found his footing again. On more than one occasion, her supportive grip at his elbow sent an unexpected flutter through him, a reminder that beyond the patient-nurse barrier, 2 souls were quietly connecting over shared determination. Meanwhile, news of his accident circulated among social media circles. Speculation rose. What would happen to his promising tech startup if its CEO was incapacitated for too long? Business partners hovered in uncertainty. Articles popped up questioning whether his app's expansion would stall. But none of that weighed on Ryan as heavily as the simple relief of being alive. During a quiet afternoon, as the sun cast mild rays through the blinds, he forced a shaky laugh at the irony. He'd always dreamed of living life on the edge. Extreme sports, high-stakes ventures, cutting-edge inventions. And now, lying here, the biggest thrill was just regaining the ability to stand without collapsing. The bond between patient and nurse deepened with each conversation. Late into her shift, Hannah sometimes lingered near Ryan's bed to chat. She admitted she was new to the hospital, excited but terrified about the magnitude of responsibility. His case had quickly become personal to her. He was her first critical care patient, the first coma she'd witnessed. She confided her anxieties about messing up, about letting him down. In turn, he found himself confessing long-buried fears, acknowledging for the first time how fragile life could be, how success meant nothing if he couldn't share it with someone who cared. Days melted into nights. Ryan's physical strength returned enough that doctors considered discharging him, but only once they were sure he could handle rehabilitation at home. He'd developed a routine with Hannah. She'd show up at the start of each shift, check his vitals, gently tease him about his bedhead, and coax him through the morning's rehab exercises. Then after lunch, she'd step away, only to reappear for the evening round. It became such a habit that he found himself anticipating her presence more than the doctor's updates. One night, as tubes were removed and monitors beeped in celebratory rhythms, Ryan asked the question that had been on his mind for days. "How can I repay you for all of this?" His voice was still raspy, but there was earnestness behind it. Hannah, caught by surprise, paused while checking his pulse. "You don't owe me anything," she replied, turning her gaze aside with a hint of embarrassment. "I'm doing my job. I'm just relieved you're improving." He tried to explain that it was more than a job. She'd truly brought him back from the brink. In her quiet humility, she insisted she was simply fulfilling her calling as a nurse. But for Ryan, it went beyond medical care. There was an unspoken closeness. Doctors had confirmed that if not for Hannah's timely response and persistent care, his outcome might have been drastically worse. Whether it was fate or coincidence, the synergy between them was powerful. And so, on his final night in the hospital, when the corridor lights dimmed and other patients slept, he found Hannah tidying up equipment near his bed. They ended up talking about everything: her childhood in a modest neighborhood, her parents' sacrifice to help her through nursing school, her dream of eventually working in a specialized trauma unit. He shared his own story, his early fascination with coding, the countless nights fueling on energy drinks to build his prototype, the sudden rocket to success that had left him feeling strangely isolated at times. When the conversation quieted, the hush of the hospital held a new tension, an electricity. He reached for her hand. Hannah, for a flicker of a moment, hesitated. Here, lines blurred, between caretaker and patient, between responsibility and something deeper. Yet that night, in the hush of that hospital ward, they both allowed the line to be crossed, shaped by an overwhelming sense of connection and gratitude. As the heart monitor beeped softly, as the dull hum of machinery underscored each breath, they shared an intimate moment that neither of them fully expected, but both were drawn to. It was fleeting, tender, yet it would forever alter both their lives. By the time Ryan was officially discharged the next morning, the lines of hospital protocol had been redrawn. Still, though they wore polite smiles in front of the watchful eyes of staff, under that surface there lingered an awareness of what had passed between them the night before. They exchanged numbers. Hannah quietly assured him that she'd check on him soon, though neither was certain if or when they'd see each other again. In the hectic blur of final discharge instructions, follow-up appointments, and a swirl of well-wishing staff, They said a subdued goodbye. Ryan left the hospital supported by an assistant from his startup, a friend from the old college coding club. In all the bustle, Hannah melted back into the sea of scrubs and lab coats. Her silhouette lingered in his mind even as the elevator doors closed. Once outside, the breath of fresh air reminded him the real world hadn't paused while he was recovering. Photographers were stationed by the curb, snapping shots of the young millionaire's return to life. His phone pinged with urgent messages about a looming investor meeting. Waves of employees and supporters had posted get-well messages. Still wobbly, Ryan got into the car that whisked him away from the hospital that had saved him. He peered through the tinted windows, half expecting to see Hannah among the faces near the entrance, but she was nowhere in sight. And so life marched on. Over the next weeks, he threw himself back into the chaos of tech leadership. Board meetings, product updates, potential expansions. He tried to submerge his memory of that quiet hospital night. Yet in the silent hours of evening, or when the chaos of meetings subsided, her face flashed unbidden in his mind. The gentle nurse who had done more than mend his broken body. Little did he know that destiny had a different plan. 3 months later, a philanthropic impulse stirred him to donate advanced medical equipment to that same hospital. It was supposed to be a quick, formal ceremony. A handshake with administrators, a polite smile for a photo, then on to the next appointment. But fate had more in store. When he arrived, stepping through the sliding doors with the new X-ray machine donation behind him, he spotted a familiar figure hurrying through the emergency department. Hannah, still in her blue scrubs, hair pinned back. Only this time, something was different. Her figure was softly rounded. She was pregnant. Ryan's heart thudded. For a second, he struggled to breathe more than he ever had with a collapsed lung. The nurse he'd longed to see again was right there, carrying a child that might very well be his. A wave of questions crashed into him, but beneath that swirling confusion was an undeniable warmth. He realized, as if struck by lightning, that some second chance at life meant more than just surviving an accident. It might also mean stepping up in a far deeper way than he had ever done before. Ryan stood at the entrance of the bustling emergency department, ignoring the ring of hospital staff chattering about his donated equipment. The sense of unreality he'd felt the moment he saw Hannah, looking distinctly pregnant, grew by the second. He blinked, half convinced he might be hallucinating again. But there she was, pausing mid-corridor with an armful of charts. She had that same poised stance, that same subdued grace, except now her figure was gently, visibly rounded. From across the distance she froze, too, their eyes locked. A silent exchange hung in the air. He could hear a faint hum behind him. An administrator's greeting, a request for a quick photograph. Yet Ryan couldn't tear his gaze from Hannah. She looked pale, even startled, as though time had flung them both into a scene neither had rehearsed. In those elongated seconds, he wondered if she might whirl around and vanish, like an apparition, leaving him to guess if any of this was real. But she stayed where she was, pressing the charts to her chest as though they might shield her from the sudden collision of their worlds. A hospital attendant stepped forward, nudging Ryan politely. "Mr. Thompson, we're ready for you to sign the donation documents," the man said. Ryan managed to murmur a vague apology, but his thoughts were elsewhere. While the staff guided him into an office near the emergency entrance, he cast one last glance behind him. Hannah hadn't moved. Inside a cramped administrative room, a swirl of hospital representatives brandished folders and clipboards. The conversation droned on about his generosity, how the new X-ray machine and digital record system would revolutionize care. He recognized the philanthropic significance, but he could only muster polite nods. Eventually, the official ceremony ended. Ryan stepped out into the hallway, scanning for a glimpse of Hannah. It took only a few moments to spot her again, heading briskly down a side corridor. He slipped away from the well-wishers. Swiftly, though still not entirely stable from lingering post-injury aches, Ryan followed. The hallway led to a staff lounge area, quiet and off-limits to visitors. A large sign clearly read, "Employees Only." He stopped at the threshold, uncertain. Then Hannah emerged from behind a half-open door. Their gazes locked a second time. They stood there, two silhouettes in a sliver of fluorescent light. Ryan cleared his throat, needing to break the hush that pressed on them. "Hannah," he said softly, afraid his voice would echo in the silent corridor. "Hi." She stepped out fully, letting the door close behind her. The moment she did, he noticed the new fullness of her face, the subtle tension in her posture. She was definitely pregnant, no doubt about it. So many questions crowded his mind. Yet something in her expression conveyed that she was bracing herself for this conversation. "Mr. Thompson," she began, clearly trying for a professional tone, but the words caught in her throat and she corrected herself quietly. "Ryan." He took a breath, steadying himself. "I didn't realize." He gestured uncertainly toward her stomach, failing to complete the sentence. The statement felt so obvious, so feeble. She nodded, inhaling slowly, a tightness in her brows. "It happened around the time you were discharged." She faltered for a moment, voice unsteady. "I didn't know how to reach you. I wasn't sure if you'd even want to know." The remark rocked him. "Of course I'd want to know. Hannah, He stopped, checking the corridor to ensure they had some semblance of privacy. "I thought of you so many times after I left. And yes, life got hectic. But I tried to—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping in. "I had your number, but everything got so chaotic with my health issues and the business. It's not an excuse, but I—" Her cheeks colored, maybe a mix of guilt or regret. "I told myself you moved on. You never called, so I just assumed maybe that night meant more to me than it did to you." The memory of that moment, the hush of the ICU ward, the soft beep of the monitors, the two of them huddled in quiet intimacy, rushed back to him. It hadn't been just an impulsive act of gratitude, it had felt real. He rubbed a palm against the knot forming in his chest. "Believe me, it mattered," he said, voice raw. "I woke up every day thinking I should contact you. But as soon as I was discharged, my entire board threatened meltdown about my app's expansion. I had rehab sessions to attend. And after that, I was ashamed I took so long." Hannah's hand drifted to her abdomen, a small protective gesture. "I wasn't sure if I should try to get in touch. I mean, from the outside, you're this successful CEO. Part of me thought you'd see it as some misguided attempt." She exhaled shakily. "Then I realized I was pregnant. It scared me, Ryan, really scared me." He closed the short gap between them, pulses pounding. "I'm so sorry you went through that alone." For a tense moment, neither spoke. He wrestled with the swirl of emotions, guilt, relief, protectiveness, and an ever-present wonder if she was okay. He wanted to hold her, assure her that everything would be fine, but he wasn't sure he had the right. Finally, he braved a question. "Have you told anyone? Your family?" She shook her head, eyes downcast. "My parents know. They live out of state. I haven't told them who the father is, though. Figured it'd be better if I was sure how you felt." Ryan swallowed hard. He had no illusions about how complicated this was going to be. Yet unexpectedly the idea of fatherhood stirred something profound inside him, something that dwarfed the swirl of business negotiations and corporate expansions that had once consumed his every waking hour. "I don't have all the answers," he confessed, "but I do know I want to be here for you, for the baby, whatever that means." There was quiet determination in his tone. "When I nearly died on that mountain, He paused, voice catching. "I was given a second chance, Hannah, and I think maybe I was meant to realize that there's more to life than success. If you'll let me, I want to be part of this." She closed her eyes, tears threatening. Relief, perhaps, and 100 other emotions. Part of me hoped you would say that. I just didn't want to assume." He reached, hesitated, then touched her elbow gently. "Let's figure it out. No rushing. No final decisions. But I'm not running from this. I promise." She squeezed his hand in return, the fragile tension in her shoulders easing a fraction. He heard her quiet, trembling exhale, as though for weeks she'd carried the weight of this alone. In that moment, Ryan felt something shift, a protective surge that overshadowed the old self-focused drive that had once pushed him to chase only achievements. This was real. This was life. They spoke in low voices for a few more minutes, each question met with uncertain answers, each worry threaded by a gentle reassurance. Hannah confided about her morning sickness, the sense of overwhelming fatigue that came from juggling shifts at the hospital while growing a new life inside her. She admitted she felt guilt, like she was intruding on his world, someone from a different walk of life. He brushed that notion aside, reaffirming that the only intrusion was the abruptness of circumstances. Eventually, hospital staff began poking their heads around the corridor. The hush of the hallway could only remain private for so long. Duty called. An intercom beeped for Hannah to return to the ED. Ryan realized he still had hospital administrators wanting to finalize the donation's details. Reluctantly, they parted, but not before exchanging phone numbers again, this time with a vow to follow through. "Can I call you tonight?" he asked, glancing at the glow of anxious staffers beckoning them from opposite ends of the corridor. "I'd really like to talk more. Away from all this." She offered a small smile. "Please do." With that, she ducked back into the swirl of emergencies, her role shifting back to that of a busy nurse on duty. The emptiness left behind hammered home one truth. He'd just stepped onto a brand new path in life, and nothing in his portfolio or entrepreneurial background had prepared him for fatherhood. Ryan had scarcely rejoined the administrators for the final handshake on the donation when his personal assistant, a meticulous older man named Ephraim, touched his shoulder. "Sir, are you all right? You look a bit pale." "I'm fine," Ryan managed, though inwardly he was reeling. "Let's finish up here." It was a whirlwind. The media had come to snap pictures of the philanthropic young CEO. Ryan forced a confident posture, controlling his voice so they wouldn't guess he was still grappling with the news that he might soon be a father. He endured the camera clicks and the swirl of reporters. But the moment the last flash went off and the final contract was signed, he excused himself. On the drive back to the corporate offices, he stared out the window at passing city blocks. Ephraim recited the day's schedule: a board meeting to discuss user analytics, a phone interview with a major tech publication, and a dinner invite from a potential investor. It all felt distant, overshadowed by an infinitely more pressing matter. He mentally scrolled through the next steps. Talk to Hannah, figure out medical checkups, consider how to handle media if the pregnancy became public. The app expansions, the investor calls, the upcoming product release. Suddenly, they all ranked second to ensuring Hannah was safe, physically and emotionally. At his penthouse office, he shut himself inside, ignoring the wide windows that showcased a skyline of steel and glass. Leaning against his desk, he replayed it all in his mind. How she'd looked, the faint tremor in her voice, the unborn child growing under her heart. A swirl of guilt hit him again. He'd fallen into her life, quite literally, in the most dramatic way possible. Then left, no matter how unintentionally, without calling. Yet if his near-death experience had taught him one thing, it was that second chances weren't handed out lightly. He wanted to do right by Hannah. He wanted to do right by the child that might be his. Remembering the fear in her eyes, he resolved that no matter how complicated the months ahead might become, he wouldn't let her bear it alone. That evening, with the lights of downtown flickering beyond the office windows, Ryan mustered the courage to dial Hannah's number. She answered, voice soft from what sounded like the hospital's break area. They spent a long time talking about doctor visits she'd scheduled in a few weeks, about the new shift changes she was managing, about her confusion over insurance coverage and prenatal care. He offered any resources she needed, whether it was financial assistance or just a supportive presence during appointments. She hesitated, then allowed a quiet, "Thank you," as though part of her still struggled to believe that he sincerely wanted to be involved. After the call, Ryan realized there was no turning back, and to his surprise, the thought wasn't terrifying, just daunting, in a sober, transformative way. He'd soared in the realm of business where numbers and algorithms were predictable. He'd faced adversity on mountain trails, risking injuries and broken bones. But stepping into fatherhood, that was a frontier with no code to debug, no blueprint to follow. Yet, he found himself embracing it, determined to prove, both to Hannah and to himself, that he was more than a flashy success story or a fleeting presence in her life. Later, as he lay awake in his upscale apartment, scanning the city lights below, he pictured a child's laughter reverberating around those pristine walls, a future that felt intangible, yet thrilling. He wondered if the echoes of that hospital night, when he thought gratitude was the sole link between them, had quietly paved the way for something deeper, more profound. In the hush of midnight, Ryan Thompson smiled. Yes, they had challenges looming, but for the first time in months, he felt anchored by purpose. Hannah wasn't just the nurse who'd saved him. She was possibly the mother of his child. And as dawn approached, he vowed to stand by her, regardless of his fortune or the hurdles that threatened to overshadow them. The next few days spun by in a whirlwind that left Hannah more exhausted than usual. Already contending with the fatigue of pregnancy, she found herself wrestling with the emotional upheaval stirred by Ryan's unexpected reappearance. She couldn't deny it. Part of her felt a swell of relief. Despite all her fears, fear that he would reject her, fear that he would vanish again, he seemed genuinely determined to be involved. Yet Hannah had seen enough of human nature working in an emergency ward to know how fleeting promises could be when confronted with real-world complications. On a crisp Tuesday morning, Hannah left her tiny apartment earlier than necessary, craving the solace of the hospital's staff lounge before clocking in. She needed to compose herself, to think. The lounge itself was a modest room with a handful of mismatched chairs, a worn-out vending machine, and a TV mounted on the wall scrolling through daily news. Hannah dropped her bag onto a table and rested a hand protectively across the small bump beneath her scrubs. Sometimes she could scarcely believe that a new life was forming inside her, one that tied her forever to the bright, complicated man who had crashed into her professional routine with the force of a falling star. She remembered how timid she felt during their phone call, how her voice seemed to shake even though she tried to project calm. She'd told Ryan about her next obstetric appointment, half expecting him to dodge it or come up with an excuse. But to her amazement, he'd immediately asked if he could attend. "I want to hear the heartbeat," he had said, his tone unwavering. "I want to see whatever you'll let me see." The memory of his earnestness made her heart flutter. Across the lounge, a fellow nurse shuffled in, Adriana, who was known for her direct manner and keen intuition. She eyed Hannah's posture and gave a half-smile. "Morning sickness?" she guessed, gesturing to the slight pallor in Hannah's cheeks. "Something like that," Hannah replied softly, and took a sip of water. Her morning sickness had thankfully eased in the last couple of weeks, replaced by a dull tiredness that she could handle. Emotionally, though, she was still adjusting to the swirl of possibilities. Adriana lowered herself into a seat nearby, leaning forward with elbows on her knees. "So, rumor has it you ran into Mr. Hotshot Tech Donor the other day," she teased, not unkindly. The hospital grapevine was unstoppable, especially after a high-profile donation ceremony where staff had glimpsed the mesmerizing tension between Hannah and the charismatic CEO. "You used to be his nurse, right?" she added. Hannah tried to keep her expression neutral. "Yes, I cared for him when he was in a coma." Adriana's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Right, And next thing we know, he's coming back to drop off a fancy X-ray machine and scurrying straight to you in the corridor. Girl, you sure do know how to leave an impression. Hannah flushed, feeling like a spotlight had pinned her. She wasn't ready to let the entire staff in on the truth of her pregnancy, at least not the father's identity. With a forced shrug, she said, "He's just grateful. He's a nice guy, wanted to check on me, I guess." "Uh-huh," Adriana said, clearly not buying the official explanation. But she left it there, perhaps sensing Hannah wasn't in the mood to divulge more. Before Hannah could steer the conversation in another direction, a beep on the lounge intercom summoned them both for their shift. Adriana rose, patting Hannah's shoulder. "Listen, if you ever need to talk about anything, you know where to find me. Sometimes it helps to confide in another nurse." She paused, sincerity softening her usual playful tone. "We look out for each other here." Hannah nodded her thanks, pressing her lips together in a small smile that couldn't hide her tension. She realized that secrecy would be nearly impossible as her belly continued to grow, but she still clung to the hope of sorting out a plan with Ryan before everyone started gossiping. Work passed in its typical swirl of triage calls, patient assessments, and chart updates. Hannah slipped into the rapid tempo of emergency care, a pace that forced her to compartmentalize her personal worries. She attended to a toddler with a raging fever, an elderly gentleman with chest pain, and a tearful teenager nursing a fractured wrist from a skateboard mishap. The intensity reminded her why she'd become a nurse in the first place, to help people in their worst moments. Here, her own emotional storms had to yield to immediate crises. Still, between tasks, her mind inevitably drifted to Ryan. How would he handle fatherhood in reality? Sure, he was earnest on the phone, but raising a baby was no small endeavor, especially for someone so deeply enmeshed in the high-stakes world of tech expansions and business pressures. She winced at the thought of paparazzi shots labeling her as some gold-digging nurse or unscrupulous employee. She'd heard too many cautionary tales, yet the more she recalled the softness in Ryan's eyes, the more her cynicism wavered. He'd nearly died and discovered a new sense of purpose, or at least that was how it seemed. She wanted so desperately to trust him. During her lunch break, she sat on a bench in the hospital courtyard. The winter sun gave only a feeble warmth, and Hannah wrapped her coat tight around her. She scrolled through her phone, noticing a message from Ryan. "Hey, thinking of you. My schedule's nuts this week, but I'd love to finalize a time for the OB appointment. Whenever works best for you, just say the word. I'm there." She bit her lip, debating. If he actually showed up, it would be a leap forward in admitting to the world that the father of her child was no secret local boyfriend, but rather a well-known figure. At the same time, the sincerity of his offer melted her defenses. Heartbeats, ultrasounds. This pregnancy was no longer just a quietly kept surprise. If he was truly ready for that step, maybe it was time to let him in. Hannah quickly texted back, "Next Wednesday, 2:30 p.m., Dr. Matthews's office. Thank you for offering. It means a lot." She didn't craft a grand, emotional message. Short and direct felt easier to manage while her feelings remained jumbled. But as soon as she hit send, her pulse ticked up. This was real. The rest of her day sailed by in a blur. She made an effort to keep hydrated, mindful of the baby's needs. At times, she caught glimpses of her reflection in the polished metal surfaces around the ward and marveled that, while still faint, her bump was definitely there. A living testament to that singular night that changed her life. As her shift ended, she strolled outside into the crisp evening air, ignoring the mild ache in her lower back. Ryan had offered her a ride, but she'd politely declined. She needed time to think, to maintain a semblance of independence. So she boarded a city bus, choosing a seat near the back. The fluorescent glare bounced off the plastic seat in front of her, and as the bus rumbled through stoplights and turned corners, she quietly replayed the last few months in her mind, discovering her pregnancy, the swirl of disbelief and hidden joy, the nights spent anxious about her future, and now, the re-emergence of Ryan, more resolute than she'd imagined. She arrived home to her modest studio apartment, flicking on a lamp that illuminated walls decorated with cheery pictures of her family and a few nature scenes. Though small, the space felt cozy, a far cry from the sterile lights of the hospital. She let out a slow breath. Her phone chimed again. This time, it was Ryan calling. "Hey," she answered, voice softer now that she was alone. "Hi," he said, equally subdued. "Long day?" She nodded, then realized he couldn't see the gesture. "Yeah, but it's okay. You?" "Meetings," Ryan replied. She could practically hear him massaging his temples. "We're finalizing a contract with a new investor. The negotiations are intense, but that's just business. Not nearly as important as—" He hesitated, seeming to check himself. "Not as important as making sure you're all right." A wave of warmth spread through her. "I'm okay. Tired, but okay." She nestled onto her old sofa, exhaling slowly. "We're all right," she added, rubbing her stomach absent-mindedly. A soft pause. "That's good to hear." Then, more quietly, "Thanks for letting me come with you to the appointment. I'd really like to be there for the heartbeat." Emotion swelled. If there was a moment to test how serious he was, hearing the rhythmic thump of new life on the ultrasound would be it. "You're welcome," she whispered. "I'm a little nervous, to be honest. It's a big step for us. Together." "I know," he said gently. "But we'll figure it out, right? I believe that." She managed a cautious smile, though he couldn't see it. "Let's hope so." Before they hung up, Ryan lingered, as if searching for the right words. "Hannah, this might sound odd, but you did more than save my life at the hospital. You changed it, and now I get a chance to do things right." His earnestness stilled her. She closed her eyes, feeling both comforted and scared by how easily he was winning her trust again. "I appreciate that, Ryan," she finally said. "I appreciate you wanting to be here." After the call ended, she glanced around her small apartment, heart pounding. If someone had told her last year that she'd be expecting a baby with a patient she'd met through the hospital, she would have dismissed it as absurd. Now, she was living it, navigating uncertainty with every step, and yet feeling a flicker of optimism she hadn't realized she needed. A week passed in cautious normalcy. Each day Ryan texted or called with thoughtful check-ins, sometimes small notes about how he hoped she was feeling well or asking if she needed anything delivered to her apartment. As promised, Wednesday came, and with it the swirl of nerves over the obstetric appointment. That afternoon, Hannah arrived at Dr. Matthews' clinic early, clutching the handle of her purse with clammy fingers. She'd come alone in the past, checking in at the reception, filling out standard forms, measuring her weight, and quietly waiting for the doctor to confirm the baby's progress. This time, she had company. Real, tangible company. She half expected that, in the last moment, Ryan might text an apology that a critical business deal had overshadowed everything. And part of her couldn't even blame him if that happened. Yet a swirl in her chest told her how disappointed she would be. She needn't have worried. 5 minutes before the appointment, Ryan appeared at the clinic door, hair slightly windswept, a purposeful glint in his eyes. He wore a casual, well-tailored shirt and pressed slacks, understated but still hinting at the sleek life he led. He spotted her across the small waiting room and raised a hand in greeting. The mild chatter of other expectant mothers and partners paused, possibly recognizing him or at least noticing the moment. Hannah rose, feeling tension coil in her muscles. This was it. They were stepping out of the hush of secret phone calls and chance corridor meetings into the reality of prospective parenthood. "Hi," she murmured. She wasn't sure if it was appropriate to hug him, so she merely allowed a small tilt of her head. "Hey," Ryan said, meeting her gaze. For a moment, the swirl of unspoken emotion flickered between them. Then Catching the receptionist's pointed glance, they strode forward together to check in for the ultrasound. As they settled into 2 chairs, side by side, Hannah exhaled shakily. The moment felt monumental, but also strangely natural. Perhaps because, in spite of everything, his world, her world, the abruptness of it all, there was an underlying certainty that the child deserved both of them, present and invested. Glancing at Ryan's face, she saw a mix of wonder and fear that mirrored her own. In that quiet, unassuming waiting room, they both understood that no business deal, no personal hesitation, no swirl of social commentary could overshadow the life they were about to witness via the ultrasound screen. When the nurse finally called Hannah's name, Ryan followed without a word, softly trailing behind like he was stepping onto holy ground. Nervousness quivered inside Hannah's stomach, but she caught his fleeting smile, and for the first time in months, she felt a kernel of confidence. They might not have all the answers, but maybe, just maybe, they had enough hope and courage to face the journey ahead. Together. Hannah reclined on the exam table, heart pounding so loudly she was sure it echoed in the small ultrasound room. The overhead fluorescent light glinted off sterile steel surfaces while posters of fetal growth stages lined the walls. Dr. Matthews, a calm presence in her white coat, chatted about routine checks and typed notes into a computer. Next to Hannah, Ryan perched stiffly in a visitor's chair, trying to mask a tension that tightened his shoulders. "This gel will feel cold," Dr. Matthews said gently, applying a transparent substance to the probe. Hannah braced for the chill against her abdomen. She'd been through ultrasounds before, but never with Ryan by her side. Having him here, leaning forward in anticipation, made everything feel new, almost surreal. Ryan cleared his throat, as if to break the hush that thickened with each heartbeat. "So, this will show—" His voice trailed, uncertain what exactly he was allowed to ask. Dr. Matthews nodded, accustomed to the jitters of first-time parents. "We'll see the baby's size, check the heartbeat, measure a few key points. You'll likely hear that whooshing rhythm, which is—" Abruptly, the ultrasound monitor flickered to life, displaying grainy shapes and shadows. Dr. Matthews slid the probe, hunting for the right angle. In seconds, a pulsing blur appeared on screen. Hannah inhaled a shaky breath. Each time she witnessed her baby's heartbeat was an emotional jolt, but this time her gaze darted to Ryan. His eyes were locked on the screen, unblinking, mouth parted as if he'd forgotten how to exhale. "That's the heartbeat," Dr. Matthews explained, adjusting the volume. The small exam room filled with a rapid, rhythmic thrum. It was simultaneously delicate and fierce, like distant galloping hooves. Ryan's lips trembled into the faintest of smiles. In that moment, Hannah watched a wave of awe cross his face. "Wow," he managed, voice hushed. "That's it?" Hannah swallowed, feeling a mix of emotion pressing against her chest. She nodded. "That's our baby," she whispered. The phrase was out before she'd had time to weigh the sentiment. Our baby. A swirl of warmth and anxiety spun through her. Ryan reached carefully for Hannah's free hand, a wordless gesture of solidarity. She let him take it, marveling at how their worlds, so vastly different, had fused into this single heartbeat dancing on a black and white screen. The corners of Dr. Matthews' eyes crinkled kindly. She'd seen this wonder many times, though each family's reaction was unique. For several minutes, the doctor performed routine checks. She measured the baby's crown-to-rump length, printed out images, and reassured Hannah about healthy progress. All the while, Ryan seemed suspended between amazement and caution. He asked a few questions about fetal development, prenatal vitamins, what to expect in the next trimester. Hannah realized, with a twinge of appreciation, that he'd done some homework. His inquiries hinted at nights spent reading about pregnancy or consulting reference materials. When it ended, Dr. Matthews wiped the gel from Hannah's abdomen and turned, expression friendly. "Everything looks good for this stage. I'll see you in a few weeks. Any concerns or unusual symptoms, call me. Don't be strangers if you need anything." Ryan helped Hannah sit up. She took the ultrasound photo that Dr. Matthews offered, then studied it in her palm. The faint silhouette, the gentle curve of a head, the suggestion of tiny limbs. A wave of protectiveness washed over her. She still found it startling that Ryan, whom she'd cared for as a patient, now stood by her side at a prenatal visit. Life had its own elaborate script, one neither of them could have drafted. Outside in the hallway, the two stood quietly for a moment. Other pregnant women moved past them, accompanied by spouses, partners, or relatives. Hannah was acutely aware of the closeness between them. "Thank you for coming," she managed softly, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Ryan pocketed the black and white ultrasound print Dr. Matthews had handed him, an extra copy. "I wouldn't have missed it." He looked at her with a mixture of resolve and tenderness. "I hope you believe that." Her chest tightened. "I do," she said, surprising herself with how much trust weighted those two simple words. Outside, the day was bright and mild. The clinic was located near a small park, its trees shedding leaves in swirling patterns. They stepped into the sunlight, breathing in crisp air that smelled faintly of pine. Hannah glanced at her watch. There were still a few hours left before her late shift at the hospital. Ryan spoke first. "I'd like to take you to lunch if you have time. Or coffee. Whatever you feel up to." She hesitated, torn between a swirl of yes and no. It had been ages since she'd done anything remotely resembling a lunch date. Even before her pregnancy, her schedule revolved around double shifts and hospital duties. But it was also difficult to ignore a small voice telling her that letting him into her daily life might complicate everything. Then again, wasn't that exactly the direction their lives were headed? "Okay," she said, inhaling the crisp air. "Lunch sounds nice." She expected Ryan to summon a driver or mention some upscale place that would dwarf her modest nurse's salary. Instead, he gestured to a cafe across the street, its sign plain, the neon flickering. "That spot looks good to me," he said with a faint grin, as if reading her mind. "Are you all right walking?" She nodded. They navigated the crosswalk, and in minutes they were inside the warm, bustling cafe that smelled of roasted beans and pastries. They settled into a corner table, the wooden chairs squeaking beneath them. The server approached, dropping off water glasses. Hannah couldn't decide if she felt shy or oddly comfortable. She noticed Ryan scanning the chalkboard menu overhead, which listed simple soups and sandwiches. She studied him out of the corner of her eye. He seemed different from the brash adrenaline chaser she'd read about in business articles. There was a subdued focus in his posture, as if every new step with her was an act of discovery. They ordered. Hannah chose a chicken salad sandwich. Ryan asked for a grilled panini. As they waited, he drummed his fingers on the table, then mustered the courage to speak. "I, did some reading about prenatal care. My assistant's brother is a pediatrician, and I asked him for some baby book recommendations." A sheepish chuckle escaped. "He gave me a huge list." She was touched by the image of him devoting time to such a personal matter in the midst of his corporate chaos. "That's actually sweet. I've mostly gotten advice from my old textbooks and from some of the more experienced nurses at the hospital, but it's different, being the one expecting." Ryan nodded, eyes earnest. "I'd like to help, in whatever way you need, financial or otherwise. I don't want you to worry." He paused, glancing at her uncertain expression. "I know it's complicated, but my resources are yours, for the baby." A swirl of conflicting feelings washed over her. Part of her bristled at the notion that money could simply solve everything, but another part was relieved at his directness. He wasn't offering condescending charity, but a genuine attempt to shoulder responsibility. "Thank you," she said carefully. I'm not sure how to handle all that yet. But I won't say no to help, especially with things like medical bills or prenatal classes. That's definitely not easy on a nurse's salary. He nodded. One step at a time, then. No pressure. The server arrived with their meals. They ate quietly at first, taking small bites while their conversation tiptoed around light subjects. How they spent their day off, random stories from Hannah's night shifts, an anecdote from Ryan about a minor meltdown in the marketing department of his startup. Normal small talk, yet beneath it pulsed an awareness that soon they'd be negotiating co-parenting decisions and rearranging entire life plans. At one point, Ryan asked softly, "Do you think your parents might come visit at some point? If they knew you had someone here to support you, maybe it would help them worry less?" Hannah paused, setting down her sandwich. "They know I'm pregnant, but they don't know who the father is. Honestly, I've been avoiding that conversation because I'm still figuring out how serious we might be. Not just about co-parenting, but about each other." Her cheeks heated. That was more honesty than she'd planned to reveal. Ryan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I understand. Maybe it's best if we figure that out before we add more voices to the mix. But if you want me there when you talk to them, I'll do it." She offered a small, appreciative smile. "Let me handle them for now, but I'll keep that in mind." The mention of her parents conjured an image of them in their quiet home in the Midwest, proudly telling neighbors how their daughter became a nurse, never expecting a swirl of celebrity-level drama. She wanted to spare them stress, at least for a little while longer. Their plates emptied, conversation lulled. Outside, passers-by marched through the late autumn wind. Hannah noted the time. She'd need to head to the hospital soon for her shift. "I should get going," she murmured. "Thank you for lunch." Ryan settled the bill quickly. "My pleasure. Let me walk you." They strolled out, shoulders huddled against the brisk breeze. Ryan's car was parked around the corner, and Hannah's bus stop was 3 blocks away. At the intersection, she paused. "I'll be fine," she said. "The bus is direct to the hospital, and it's only about 10 minutes away." He nodded, lips pressed thin. "All right, take care. Text me when you get off your shift, will you?" A warm feeling spread through her chest at the concern in his voice. "I will." They lingered in a small silence, both uncertain if a quick hug or handshake was the right gesture. Finally, Ryan took a small step forward, cupping her elbow lightly. "Hannah," he said, softly enough that the wind nearly stole the word. She looked up. "I'm really glad I got to see the baby's heartbeat. Thank you for letting me in." For a second, her eyes flickered with emotion, but she suppressed the tears that threatened. "Me too," she managed. "I guess we'll keep figuring this out." A faint grin touched his mouth. "Yes, we will." Then they parted. As she walked away, Hannah's heart felt unsteady, equal measures dread and hope. She reminded herself that nothing was certain in life, that a man like Ryan could vanish if things became too messy or if business demands overshadowed fatherhood. But her intuition insisted that he was earnest. She wanted to believe it, if only because the trust offered in that exam room might be what carried them forward. The bus arrived soon after, and she took a seat near a window, staring back at the downtown streets. She caught a glimpse of him in the distance, crossing toward his parked vehicle. She observed a tension in his walk, as though he was already on a phone call or grappling with the next urgent matter on his schedule. Could he really keep this up, nurturing the expansion of his tech empire while also stepping into a father's role? Hannah closed her eyes. The baby would continue to grow, unstoppable as the tide. In a matter of months, she'd face labor, with or without him at her side. It dawned on her that this journey had no definitive map. Yet if the heartbeat they'd witnessed taught her anything, it was that life found a way forward, even amid uncertainty. And perhaps that was all she needed to trust, that they would do their best, day by day, breath by breath. The bus squeaked to her hospital stop. She trudged out, pushing open the heavy glass doors of the building she knew so well. Her shift badge beeped at the staff entrance. Familiar corridors stretched ahead, bustling with white coats and quick footsteps. She paused, placing a hand gently on her abdomen as she thought of that flickering ultrasound, then remembered Ryan's awed expression. In the swirl of triage calls and emergencies, she found a strange sense of calm. No matter how many unknowns lay ahead, she wasn't alone in this. For now, that was enough. The beep of a new patient intake echoed down the hall, pulling her back into the flow of her vocation. Hannah squared her shoulders, stepping forward with new resolve, determined to balance the role of dedicated nurse with that of an expectant mother whose child, thankfully, would have a father determined to be there every step of the way. From the moment Hannah glimpsed the baby's heartbeat, she felt a shift in her own heart. Not just because Ryan had been there by her side, though that alone sent ripples through her emotions. No, this shift was subtler, a gentle but unyielding sense that the pregnancy's next phase was here. Gone were the hazy weeks of tentative acceptance. She was starting to feel the weight of the life growing within her, both physically and mentally. The hospital workload continued at its usual frenetic pace. Hannah found herself running triage on a series of minor injuries, occasionally handling more serious cases that demanded all her attention. Yet now and then, she caught her mind wandering to the memory of Ryan's awestruck face during the ultrasound. She could almost still hear that whooshing heartbeat, reminding her that every decision she made, every shift she pulled, was for the good of the tiny person who'd soon arrive. One afternoon, she was reorganizing medical supplies in the pediatric wing, humming softly to stave off fatigue, when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced around. No urgent tasks demanded her immediate attention, so she took a moment to slip away to an empty corridor and answer. It was Ryan. "Hey," she greeted, conscious that her voice echoed slightly in the hallway. "Everything all right?" A slight pause on his end. "Yes. Just wanted to hear your voice," he admitted, sounding a bit sheepish. "I've had back-to-back meetings, but my mind keeps drifting to you and the baby." Hannah leaned against the wall. "We're okay. Tired, but okay. I appreciate you checking in." The line crackled faintly as he exhaled. "Have you decided about birthing classes? I found a few in the city that look reputable. I could sign us up, if you want me there." The mention of birthing classes caught her by surprise. She hadn't gotten that far in planning, but the sincerity in his question tugged at her. "Actually," she mused, "I was going to ask the hospital's maternity ward for recommendations, but if you have some leads, sure, let's do it." A hint of a smile tugged her lips. "Never thought we'd be figuring out breathing exercises together, but here we are." Ryan's warm laugh came through. "You and me both," he confessed. "I'll text you the class info I have. We can pick whichever fits your schedule." They chatted briefly, him giving updates on a new investor who wanted to push the app internationally, her describing how she was rotating for an overnight shift soon. It still felt surreal, balancing banter about employee expansions with the delicate reality that in a few months they'd be parents. Yet each call they shared built a stronger bridge between their once separate worlds. Over the next few days, they settled on a set of Saturday birthing classes at a modest community center. Ryan arranged everything and offered to pick her up so they could attend together. That Saturday morning, Hannah waited on the curb of her apartment building, scanning the street for an unfamiliar car. She'd only taken the bus or walked with Ryan in the past. This was a new glimpse into his lifestyle. His sleek black sedan pulled up a few minutes later, purring as it idled. He hopped out to open the passenger door, wearing comfortable jeans and a plain sweater. She liked seeing him dressed down with none of the formal CEO veneer. He greeted her with a small smile, then hurried to take her bag. It was a brief moment of chivalry, but it warmed her all the same. The drive to the community center was punctuated by light talk. Her recounting a funny story about a pediatric patient who kept insisting their teddy bear needed a bandage. Him laughing about how an intern at his office spilled coffee on crucial paperwork. Even these small anecdotes drew them closer. At the community center, they joined a small group of expectant couples, a few pairs who looked older, another couple around Hannah's age, and one single mother who seemed relieved not to be the only one without a ring on her finger. Hannah caught the woman's eye and offered a friendly smile. It was a subtle reassurance that they were all here for the same reason. Their instructor, a peppy woman named Tara, guided them through introductions. When it was Hannah and Ryan's turn, they stumbled a bit, unsure how to describe their relationship. Ryan said simply, "I'm Ryan, this is Hannah," and let the silence fill in the blanks. No one pried, but Hannah sensed curious glances, as if noticing the mismatch of her simple outfit and his more upscale vibe. Soon enough, they were practicing basic breathing exercises, leaning into each other for support. The exercises made them both a little self-conscious, breathing in sync, pressing foreheads together to focus. Yet, amidst the gentle tension, Hannah couldn't deny how comforting Ryan's presence was. His voice, quietly counting breaths, steadied her. She felt the warmth of his hand bracing her back, an unspoken sign that he wanted to be every bit the partner she'd needed. Later, the class moved on to discussion about labor signs, pain management, and helpful tips for new parents. Everyone formed a semicircle on yoga mats. One by one, they shared their anxieties and excitements. Everything from fear of complications to picking out nursery themes. When Hannah's turn came, she hesitated, heart hammering. How much should she share? She simply mentioned she worked as a nurse, so she felt somewhat prepared medically, but was still overwhelmed. Ryan added that he was looking forward to fatherhood, though his eyes flicked to her nervously, revealing how new this territory was for him. The instructor nodded encouragingly. "It's okay not to know everything yet," she told them. "The important thing is that you're here, building a support system. You'll figure it out together." After class, couples drifted out in pairs, swapping goodbyes. Hannah and Ryan lingered, gathering the pamphlets Tara had provided. Outside, a stiff autumn breeze ruffled the trees in the parking lot. Ryan tucked the pamphlets under his arm. "Hungry?" he asked. "We could grab a quick bite, or head back if you're too tired." She could hear the caution in his voice, an unspoken, "Are you okay?" She laid a hand against her stomach, which gave a mild rumble. "Actually, a snack would be great." They chose a diner nearby, the kind with a striped awning and metal stools by the counter. Inside, they slid into a booth beneath fluorescent lights. Ryan ordered a milkshake and fries, while Hannah opted for a grilled cheese and tomato soup, something warm to soothe her pangs of fatigue. The place was buzzing with small-town chatter, a waitress calling orders, the sizzle of the grill, a family in the corner booth. "So," Ryan began after they'd placed their orders, "how are you feeling about all of this? Classes, parenthood, us?" Hannah swallowed, letting the comfort of the moment guide her honesty. "It's scary," she admitted. "But also, I feel better knowing you're really committed. I can't deny it's a relief having a partner in all this, even if it's unexpected." He nodded, fiddling with the corner of a napkin. "I get that. I'm still grappling with how big a change this is. My schedule, the demands of the board, the app expansions. Some days it feels like I'm drowning in business calls. Then I think about the baby, and it's like my priorities shift in an instant." He paused, eyes dropping. "I don't want to fail you both." A surge of empathy fluttered in Hannah's chest. "You won't fail us," she said, surprising even herself with the certainty in her voice. "Look at you. You came to class. You're researching parenthood. You could be a million places right now, but you're here." Their food arrived, giving them a moment to gather themselves. Hannah savored a spoonful of soup, the warmth cutting the chilly draft from the door. Ryan took a sip of his milkshake, blinking as if lost in thought. She ventured gently, "Have you told anyone in your circle? Your board members? Your colleagues?" He shook his head, gaze dropping. "Not yet. I'm cautious about how it might affect the business image, especially with new investors. It's silly, but people panic if they think the CEO might be distracted. A wry smile tugged at his lips. Isn't that ridiculous? Having a child is the most normal part of life, but in my world it's seen as a potential liability or PR fiasco. Hannah understood. She'd seen glimpses of how media spun personal stories into narratives that overshadowed real achievements. I get it, she murmured. So how will you reveal it? Or do you plan to? Ryan's jaw tensed slightly. I'll have to soon enough. The paparazzi watch me like hawks whenever there's a big announcement. But I want to protect you, and the baby, from that circus. We'll do it on our terms, not because someone leaks a photo. He reached across the table, tentatively touching her wrist. I promise, Hannah. I won't let them turn this into tabloid fodder. She closed her eyes briefly, absorbing his sincerity. Thank you. I know how ruthless that world can be. I'd hate to see the baby caught up in all of it. They finished their meals with lighter conversation about the quirky things they'd learned in class, a comedic moment when another mom-to-be accidentally sat on a yoga ball and nearly toppled over. But beneath the jokes, Hannah felt a deepening current of trust. For now, they were weaving a cautious partnership built on the quiet vow that they'd protect this child from the chaos that could easily descend. On the drive back, the clouds swelled overhead, hinting at rain. Hannah peered out the window, watching as storefronts blurred by. Ryan occasionally glanced over, likely checking if she was comfortable. She felt an odd twinge, gratitude and vulnerability all at once. The father of her child was so different from anyone she'd imagined herself with, yet each small kindness drew her closer. Arriving at her apartment building, she hesitated a moment before unbuckling her seatbelt. Thank you for taking me to the class, she said quietly. I appreciated having you there. He smiled, faint tension relaxing in his jaw. I'm glad you let me come. I'll see you next time? She nodded. Yes, next Saturday's class, same time. Then, almost impulsively, she leaned over and gave him a light hug, an embrace that lasted only seconds but carried an unspoken meaning. We are in this together. When she climbed out, she felt his gaze following her to the door. Rain began to sprinkle and she hurried up the steps. It wasn't until she was inside, leaning against the closed door, that she let out the breath she'd been holding. Her world felt unsteady, but it was also starting to take shape. Between the birthing classes, the ultrasound visits, the fleeting but genuine moments of connection, a fragile optimism sprouted. She flicked on the lamp, setting down the pamphlets on her small dining table. One had a photo of a mother and father cradling a newborn, eyes brimming with joy. Hannah's heart clenched, wondering if that could soon be her reality. Maybe it wasn't so impossible. Maybe the unlikeliest beginnings sometimes led to the strongest bonds. Just then her phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. She smiled softly as she read his message. Made it home. Thinking about today. Thank you for giving me a chance to be the dad I want to be. Slipping off her shoes, Hannah typed back. Thank you for showing up. Let's keep going, one step at a time. She set her phone aside, heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Yes, one step at a time. After all, the baby's heartbeat was strong, and that quiet drumbeat was the only compass she truly needed. Over the next few weeks, Hannah found her life softly reorienting around a growing sense of belonging to something bigger than herself and her daily routine. She still worked the same shifts at the hospital, trudged home exhausted, and kept her modest studio apartment tidy. But now there was a subtle shift in the rhythm of her days. She and Ryan texted regularly with updates on how she was feeling, shared small achievements and frustrations from their separate worlds, and met for birthing classes every Saturday. The baby's presence between them felt like a bridge connecting two previously distant shores. Despite the steady progress, the real world outside their intimate bubble slowly began pressing in. Ryan was, after all, not just an average guy. He was the face and brain behind a rapidly expanding tech startup, and the rumor mill never slept. Early one morning, Hannah noticed a tabloid website featuring a photo of Ryan stepping out of a black sedan, perhaps the day they'd gone to the diner after class. The headline read, "Tech Mogul's Mysterious New Companion, Romance or Business." There wasn't a direct shot of her face, but Hannah recognized the color of her coat, the tilt of her shoulder. Her pulse quickened. It was a reminder of the precarious line they walked. She studied the photo, relieved that it was taken from afar and didn't reveal her pregnancy, but anxiety flickered. Once the press confirmed that the new companion was an expectant mother, gossip would explode. She took a shaky breath, turned off her phone, and forced herself to focus on her day's tasks at the hospital. Still, the knowledge that cameras lurked made her uneasy. Ryan, on the other hand, dealt with the corporate world's scrutiny in real time. One afternoon, he sat in a tense board meeting, clutching his phone more than usual, ever aware that Hannah might call with a sudden question or concern. The discussion revolved around a high-stakes investor who wanted to push for an even faster global rollout of Ryan's app. The investor, an older man named Crane, had a reputation for aggressive expansions. As the meeting stretched on, Crane laced his fingers together and peered across the polished conference table at Ryan. "Young man," he drawled, "your energy is your strongest asset, but I hear rumors you've been distracted lately. Something about a new relationship in your life." A subtle hush fell over the boardroom. Other members glanced uncomfortably at each other. Ryan felt his cheeks heat. It wasn't uncommon for personal gossip to swirl within corporate circles, but hearing it addressed so directly in a formal meeting set his nerves on edge. He tried to maintain composure. "My personal life is my own. The company remains on track, sir. We've exceeded growth predictions for the last quarter. Our user base soared by 15% globally." Crane shrugged, a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That's good. Just be sure you don't let extracurriculars hamper your focus. We've all seen promising talent sidetracked by new priorities." Ryan pressed his lips together. He wanted to bark that fatherhood wasn't some extracurricular. Instead, he took a measured breath. "Rest assured, my commitment to this expansion hasn't wavered." The meeting trudged forward, but the uneasy atmosphere lingered. By the end, Ryan emerged into the corridor with shoulders tight. Ephraim, his assistant, stepped up, concern etched into his expression. "Sir, if I may, the new investors are fishers for rumors. We need a strategy to handle the press in case they learn more." Ryan stared at the floor for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, we'll get ahead of it. Issue a statement when the time is right. For now, no confirmations, no clarifications. I just don't want Hannah or the baby thrown into a media frenzy." Ephraim's voice turned soothing. "I understand. Just be careful. The more you keep them in the dark, the more the press might pry." Ryan sighed. After all he'd been through, his near-death accident, the swirl of uncertainty, he knew one thing. He wouldn't let public speculation strain the fragile trust he'd built with Hannah, and so he clung to hope that they could navigate the situation privately for as long as possible. Meanwhile, Hannah's daily life had its own challenges. A couple of her hospital co-workers suspected something was up. Adriana, the same nurse who'd teased her before, poked gentle fun one evening. "So, Hannah, you've been glowing. Is there someone in the picture?" She winked. "I mean, besides the baby we all know you're expecting." Hannah played it off with a shrug and a shy smile. "I'm taking birthing classes. There's, a supportive partner who's helping me out." Her tone carefully avoided detail. Adriana's eyebrows lifted with curiosity, but she sensed Hannah's hesitation and didn't push. Still, Hannah knew rumors brewed easily in a place like this. It wouldn't be long before more direct questions came. The next Saturday, Hannah and Ryan met for their birthing class again. This session focused on newborn care, swaddling, soothing techniques, even changing diapers on practice dolls. Ryan approached each activity with a mixture of determination and amusement. As he fiddled with a tiny diaper, his eyebrows scrunched in comic concentration. "Okay, Clearly building apps doesn't translate into immediate skill with baby tapes, he murmured dryly, prompting a snicker from Hannah. She found the scene both hilarious and endearing. If anyone had told her a year ago that she'd be watching this ambitious tech CEO wrestling with a baby doll's outfit in a community center, she would have thought them insane. But here he was, sincerity etched in every fumbling move. When they finally succeeded in their assigned tasks, they exchanged a private smile. A warm sense of partnership coursed through Hannah, a reassurance that maybe they could handle the messy, unpredictable side of parenthood just as well as the romance of ultrasound moments. During a short break, Hannah watched other couples chatting, sipping water, or looking at the pamphlets the instructor had passed out. She noticed the single mother again, flipping through notes with a pensive expression. On impulse, Hannah approached, introducing herself more fully. The woman's name was Ava. She was around Hannah's age, also working a demanding job with unpredictable hours. As they talked, they discovered a shared fear, balancing a new baby with a career. Ava glanced at Ryan, who stood across the room talking quietly with another father-to-be. "Your partner seems attentive," Ava remarked softly. "I don't see a ring on either of you, but you both look like you're in this together." Hannah offered a small nod, warmth coloring her cheeks. "Yes, it's still new, but we're trying. I feel lucky he's making the effort." She hesitated, then let out a breath. "It's not always easy in our line of work or with his schedule, but we're committed." Eva gave a wry smile. "All of us are just figuring it out, I guess. Feels good to know I'm not the only one juggling 1,000 worries." They parted when class resumed. Hannah returned to Ryan's side with renewed perspective. Others out there were braving the same uncertainties, forging families of many shapes and stories. That knowledge eased her anxieties, making the challenges ahead feel a little less lonely. At the close of the session, the instructor reminded everyone of an optional home visit program. New parents could have a nurse or experienced volunteer check-in after the baby's birth. Hannah smiled at the notion. As a nurse herself, she might not need it, but it was nice to see such community support. Next to her, Ryan took a flyer, studied it, and murmured, "Might be good to keep on hand, right?" Once again, they ended their Saturday in a mellow lunch routine. Though this time, Ryan suggested they pick up sandwiches and coffee to enjoy at a nearby park. The weather had turned crisp, leaves swirling in oranges and browns around a small duck pond. They settled onto a bench, nestling in jackets to keep warm. Between bites, Hannah asked, "How are things with your board? I remember you mentioning an investor was pushing for bigger expansions." Ryan sighed, leaning back. "It's intense. This investor, Crane, wants us in new markets within 6 months, an aggressive timeline. It'll demand heavier coding schedules, big marketing pushes, possibly more traveling for me. But I'm trying to hold my ground, ensure we scale responsibly." She recognized the line of worry creasing his brow. Gently, she touched his forearm. "Traveling might be tough with the baby coming. Have you told them about us?" He shook his head. "Not yet. I don't want them making business decisions based on my personal life, but soon I'll have to. And Crane's, well, not the most understanding type." His eyes rested on her. "But none of that changes my commitment to being around for you, for everything we need." A small ache of gratitude rolled through her. "I know, and we'll find a way to balance it all. Maybe we can look at your schedule together, see how to plan around the last few months of pregnancy." The idea of coordinating schedules, like a real couple, startled them both with its practicality. But as the conversation went on, they found themselves discussing potential caretaker options, parental leave, something Ryan would have to carve out from his own company policies, and the possibility of whether they'd eventually want to share a living space. That last topic brought a hush. They exchanged shy glances but didn't delve too deeply. It felt early for that. Yet the mere mention hinted at how real this was becoming. Suddenly, Ryan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, grimacing. "It's Ephraim. he told Hannah. "I should probably take this." She nodded, sipping her coffee while he stepped a few feet away. The crisp air carried the rustle of leaves, a background to the tension mounting in Ryan's voice. She caught fragments. "Right now?" And I told them I'm not available. And fine, I'll handle it. He returned, apology weighing on his features. "I'm so sorry. Crane's calling a snap meeting. He expects me on a video conference in half an hour." Disappointment stung, but she masked it with understanding. "Go. We've done all we can for today's class anyway. Work's important." He hesitated, brushing a gentle hand against her upper arm. "I'll make it up to you tomorrow. Maybe we can talk about the next steps for the baby's room, or at least some basics we'll need. I'd really like your input." Her heart softened. "I'd like that. Text me later. Let me know how it goes." He nodded, then offered a quick hug. In moments, he was striding away, phone to his ear. Hannah watched him climb into his car. The line between their two worlds, hospital nurse and tech tycoon, never felt more visible or more delicate to balance. Yet she found herself smiling as she tossed the sandwich wrappers into a nearby trash bin. They were learning day by day how to adjust, compromise, and be honest with each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. She strolled back through the park, leaves crunching underfoot. A gentle flutter in her abdomen made her pause, a sensation she'd been noticing more frequently. The baby was growing, no doubt about it. She wondered what it would be like in a few short months, feeling stronger kicks, or watching Ryan experience those movements for the first time. Warmth blossomed inside her at the thought. As she neared the bus stop, she gazed at the reflection in the glass shelter. A young woman in a plain coat, posture hinting at the beginnings of pregnancy. She saw the subtle differences, an outline that was no longer only hers. In her eyes, something softly determined sparkled, perhaps reflecting the love and acceptance she'd been cautiously letting in. The bus arrived, and she climbed aboard, hugging her jacket close. Instead of dread, she felt a steadfast sense of purpose. Back at her apartment, she settled at her small kitchen table, rummaging through the new pamphlets from class. She imagined them carefully arranged in a future shared home, maybe pinned to a fridge next to ultrasound pictures. She wasn't sure exactly how or when that step might happen, but the prospect no longer seemed impossible. Her phone chimed again, another text from Ryan, letting her know he'd arrived safely at his office and was bracing for the emergency call. She typed back a simple, "good luck," with a small heart emoji, pressing send before she could overthink it. Then she allowed herself to lean into the quiet hush of the afternoon. Another birthing class behind them, new knowledge gained, new steps taken. Yes, the future was uncertain and the pressure of Ryan's corporate demands loomed large, but for now, they had a bond, an unwavering heartbeat inside her, and a blossoming partnership that felt stronger each time they faced these little tests together. If that wasn't enough to carry them forward, Hannah thought, then nothing would be. But as she let her hand rest gently over her belly, she believed more than ever that it would be enough. A tiny life was counting on both of them, and they were determined not to disappoint. Hannah woke to the low hum of her alarm, the early morning light graying the edges of her modest studio. Usually she'd have just enough time to brew a quick cup of coffee, now decaf, of course, before heading to the hospital, but today she had the day off, a rare break in her rotation schedule, and she planned to use it for a long-overdue catch-up, laundry, tidying up, maybe even a bit of rest. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, hand automatically drifting to her abdomen, feeling that gentle swell that seemed to grow more pronounced each day. Her phone glowed on the nightstand with a few unread messages. One from Ryan, sent late the previous night. "Client dinner ran long. Crazy day. Missing you. Hope you're resting well. Let's talk tomorrow?" She allowed herself a soft smile. Even in the relentless pace of his corporate world, he managed to keep her tethered to his thoughts. Another text was from her mom. "Hi, sweetie. Your father and I will be passing through your city in a couple of weeks. Maybe we can finally meet that special someone? Love you." Hannah inhaled sharply. Her parents had dropped hints about visiting ever since learning of the pregnancy. They were supportive but worried, especially since Hannah had kept a tight lid on the identity of the baby's father. With every phone call, her mother gently prodded, "Are you seeing someone? Is he serious?" Hannah found excuses to dodge specifics. Now the chance to come clean stood right in front of her, a collision course she couldn't avoid. But was she ready for her parents to meet Ryan? To discover that the father of their future grandchild was a wealthy tech entrepreneur who, until recently, had been all over the news for his philanthropic donation, and who was still nursing injuries from a terrifying accident just months prior. The thought made her stomach flutter. She typed a quick reply. "I'd love to see you. Let me check schedules. I'll call tonight. Love you both." Setting the phone aside, Hannah tried to center herself. The day was hers. No hospital alarms, no triage phone calls, no corporate demands from Ryan's side. Just silence, except for the hum of traffic outside and the faint clank of pipes in her aging building. She rummaged through her closet, pulling out a comfier sweater, the kind with a little extra room around her growing bump, and then wandered into her kitchen to fix breakfast. Midway through flipping eggs in a pan, she found her mind drifting to thoughts of how that meeting might go. She pictured her parents arriving, suitcases in hand, stepping into her small studio. They'd probably noticed the baby items she was slowly accumulating. The pamphlets from her birthing class, the free bottles and pacifiers she'd collected from hospital reps, maybe a baby blanket she'd crocheted in quiet moments. Then there would be Ryan, offering a polite handshake, gently explaining how they'd met, why he cared so deeply. Maybe it would be a warm moment, or maybe it would be a barrage of concerned questions. She took a breath and gently slid the eggs onto a plate, pushing the worries aside for the moment. After breakfast, she tidied up the apartment, gathered laundry, and checked her mailbox downstairs. Bills, a local coupon flyer, and a sealed envelope from Dr. Matthews's office, likely a standard update about scheduling next checkups. She headed back upstairs, sorting through the papers. The envelope confirmed her next ultrasound date was only a couple of weeks away, same time frame her parents planned to visit. It felt symbolic, her family's arrival coinciding with a chance to glimpse the baby's progress. Another subtle nudge from the universe that she couldn't indefinitely keep these parts of her life separate. That afternoon, she tried to rest on her futon, flipping through baby name lists from the free apps she'd downloaded. Nothing felt quite right yet, though she had a short mental list of favorites. She wondered if she should ask Ryan about his preferences. Did he have a family naming tradition, or a name that reminded him of someone meaningful from his past? Then again, they hadn't even touched that topic yet. Her phone vibrated, jolting her from daydreaming. She expected maybe another message from her parents, but it was Adriana, her nurse friend, calling on her day off. Hannah answered, suspicion prickling. "Hey, you," Adriana said with abrupt urgency. "Are you near your TV or laptop? You need to see something." No, I'm at home. What's going on?" Adriana hesitated. "There's some local news coverage about your friend, Ryan Thompson. They just flashed pictures of him and I think you. The reporter was saying something about an alleged relationship." Hannah's throat dried. Pictures of me or just the back of my head? She'd hoped those distant paparazzi shots from before were all that existed. "Not super clear, but they were claiming you're pregnant. They said they've heard rumors from inside the hospital that you're carrying his baby. They even mentioned you being seen together at some private class sessions. Sounds like they got wind of your birthing classes." Her heart hammered. She sank onto the futon, free hand pressed protectively over her belly. How would they find that out?" Adriana's tone softened. "Hannah, people talk. Maybe someone recognized Ryan from the news, put two and two together. Listen, I just wanted to warn you before you saw it plastered everywhere. The story's picking up on local channels and social media. Hannah thanked her friend, ended the call, and stared into space. She dreaded checking the internet, but curiosity won out. Opening her laptop, she found several sites speculating on Ryan Thompson's hush-hush love life, a few with grainy photos outside the community center. One shot even showed them leaving the diner, though her silhouette was partly shielded by Ryan's body. The captions were sensational. Hospital nurse turned billionaire baby mama, and inside the tech tycoon's secret romance. Her face burned with embarrassment. This was everything she'd feared: intrusive speculation, judgment from strangers. Her phone lit up again, this time with Ryan's name. She picked up, voice shaky. "Ryan?" He exhaled on the line. "I just saw. It's all over my alerts. I'm sorry, I never wanted it to blow up like this." "It's not your fault," she managed, swallowing hard. "But what do we do?" A pause. She pictured him standing in his sleek office, maybe wringing his hands or pacing the floor. "My PR team wants me to release a statement," he said quietly. "They say it'll look better if I confirm the relationship so we can control the narrative. But I don't want to do anything that makes you uncomfortable." Hannah closed her eyes, tears threatening behind her lids. So this was it. Her private little world laid bare for the city to see. She tried to steady her breathing. "I'm not sure I'm ready. But maybe it's better than letting them make up awful stories." "I agree. We can frame it on our terms." His voice trembled slightly, but he pressed on. "Let me talk to my PR people. We'll craft something respectful, something that doesn't overshadow your personal life. If you want, we'll mention we're expecting a baby, that we're excited, and that's all. We don't owe them details." She took a moment to let that settle. "Okay," she whispered. "Just promise me you'll keep it about us, not some flashy business angle." "Of course," he assured, a note of tenderness creeping in. "I promise." After the call ended, Hannah felt simultaneously numb and exposed, as though the solid ground beneath her had turned to quicksand. Even so, a spark of relief glimmered. If the truth was out, maybe it would no longer loom like a bomb waiting to detonate. They could address it, own it, and then focus on building a life together. Evening approached. Hannah tried distracting herself by organizing her closet, folding clothes in neat stacks and discarding old items that no longer fit. Yet the tension lingered, every bit of mental space dominated by how differently tomorrow might look. At some point, she forced herself to call her parents, bridging the conversation with small talk before confessing, "Mom, Dad, there's something I've been meaning to share about the baby's father. He's someone I cared for at the hospital, someone you might have seen in the news." Her mom sounded surprised but not angry. "Hannah, we only want your happiness. This might be sudden, but I'm sure you have your reasons for keeping it quiet. We love you, both of you," she added, voice gentle, "and we want to meet him." Hannah promised to arrange a meeting. The notion of her parents wanting to meet Ryan brought back the swirl of nerves, yet also a thread of comfort. If they were supportive, then maybe this new wave of attention wouldn't tear her life apart. Later, Ryan called again, exhausted from more crisis meetings with his PR team. "We're releasing a statement tomorrow just confirming that I'm in a private relationship and expecting a child," he explained, sounding resigned. "I insisted they keep it low-key, no grand details. They wanted to do an interview, but I refused." Hannah's chest felt tight. "Thank you," she said. "I appreciate you protecting our privacy as much as you can." His tone softened. "I wish we could have done this on our own schedule, but no matter what, I'm in this with you. Whatever happens, we handle it together." She rubbed a hand along her belly, heart brimming with mixed emotions. "We will," she echoed. That night she barely slept. She tossed and turned, imagining headlines, picturing cameras flashing when she stepped onto the bus or out of the hospital. But every time panic took hold, she remembered how Ryan's voice steadied her. She reminded herself that the baby within was the real priority. No press scandal could change that. By dawn, her phone was already buzzing with messages. Friends, co-workers, even acquaintances from nursing school, all claiming to see tidbits about her and Ryan on local news. Some offered congratulations, others pressed for details. Hannah answered only a handful, focusing on the supportive ones, ignoring any that felt invasive. Mid-morning, Ryan's official statement appeared on major tech outlets and local media websites. Simple, direct. Yes, I'm in a committed relationship and my partner and I are expecting our first child. We look forward to this new chapter with joy and ask for privacy during this personal time. I remain fully dedicated to leading my company through its upcoming expansions. No mention of Hannah by name, no dramatic flair, just enough to confirm the rumors. Hannah breathed relief, reading the words on her screen. She could handle this. They both could. Press coverage would spike, and there would be the usual swirl of speculation. But at least the truth was no longer a secret. She sent Ryan a text. "Thank you for how you handled it. Feeling better knowing we're being open on our own terms." He responded quickly. "Always. And let's not let this overshadow the good things. Like your next ultrasound. I'll be there. Promise." She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek as she reread the message. Yes, the world could spin wild around them. Snaps of paparazzi, pointed questions from the hospital staff, a swirl of online gossip. But a deeper anchor existed now, something that kept them afloat. A child's heartbeat, their shared effort, the simple sincerity in each text exchanged. Let them watch, she thought. We have each other and that's all that matters. The morning sunlight filtered through Hannah's bedroom curtains, highlighting floating dust motes in the otherwise still air. She sat on the edge of her bed, tying her shoelaces slowly. Today marked a new milestone, another ultrasound appointment, one that came just days after Ryan had publicly confirmed their relationship and the pregnancy. Though no paparazzi swarmed her building, at least not yet, she still harbored a nagging feeling that eyes might be on her whenever she walked outside. She stood, smoothing the front of her blouse, her growing baby bump now unmistakable. Even her looser-fitting clothes couldn't hide it anymore, especially not from prying lenses. Hannah drew a calming breath. She wasn't going to let anxiety overshadow what should be a moment of joy. Today she'd see the baby again. Ryan would meet her at the clinic, and maybe afterward they'd make progress on planning for the nursery. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. "On my way. Traffic's thick, but I'll get there. Don't worry, I won't miss this." Smiling, she gathered her bag, double-checked she had her insurance card, and headed out. The weather was crisp, leaves collecting in sidewalk corners and rustling underfoot. At the bus stop, she caught herself glancing around as though paparazzi might jump from behind a tree. But no one seemed to pay her extra attention, just the usual weekday bustle of workers and students. She boarded the bus and found a seat by the window, hands resting protectively over her belly. Her mind drifted to the ultrasound she'd had weeks ago, the tenderness of Ryan's reaction to the heartbeat. He'd become a steady force in her life since then, navigating the swirl of media questions and corporate demands while still making time to text or call her every night. The public statement he released had subdued some of the more sensational headlines, though speculation continued. The short ride ended, and Hannah hopped off by Dr. Matthews's clinic. She crossed the street, dodging a few pedestrians, and spotted Ryan's car pulling up to a parking lot across from the building. He got out, waving her over. "Hey," she greeted, slightly breathless, hugging her coat around her. He wore a relieved expression. "I was worried I might be late. The investor meeting ran over." Stepping closer, he leaned down to give her a brief, warm hug. "Ready for this?" She nodded, nerves mixing with anticipation. "Ready." They walked inside together, heading for the second-floor OB/GYN office. At the reception desk, the woman on duty recognized them instantly. Hannah could tell from her widened eyes, but to her credit she only offered a pleasant smile and processed their check-in efficiently. They sat in the waiting area. Hannah flicked through a pregnancy magazine, skimming articles about nutrition and postpartum care. Ryan looked around with subdued curiosity, noticing a few other couples, some heavily pregnant, others just starting to show. He turned to her. "I mentioned to my mother about our next ultrasound," he said quietly. "She's thrilled. She lives in another state, so she can't exactly pop by, but we video called last night. She's eager to meet you someday." Hannah's chest fluttered. She'd known very little about Ryan's family. He rarely mentioned them, though he'd said once that his parents were divorced. "Did you tell her much about me?" she asked, half nervous. "A little," he replied, offering a reassuring look. "I kept it simple, just that you're a nurse, that you took care of me after my accident, and that you're an incredible person." Her cheeks warmed at the compliment. "I didn't want to overwhelm her yet, but she's just happy I'm alive, honestly. The accident scared her more than she'd let on." Hannah squeezed his hand gently. "I'd like to meet her one day." It felt like a big step, but then again, everything about this journey was big. Before they could say more, a nurse opened the door leading to the exam rooms. "Hannah Williams, you can come back now." They followed the nurse into a small, familiar room. Dr. Matthews greeted them warmly. "Hello again, you two. Ready to see how baby's growing?" Ryan and Hannah exchanged a smile, each settling into their places. Hannah on the exam table, Ryan in a chair close by. Dr. Matthews prepped the ultrasound machine, applied cool gel to Hannah's stomach, and began scanning. The monitor flickered to life, and for a moment, a black and white blur filled the screen. Hannah's heart soared when Dr. Matthews angled the probe. There it was. The baby, more distinct than ever, limbs visibly formed, slight movements detectable. The flickering heartbeat thrummed audibly, stronger and steadier than before. Ryan's eyes glistened with awe. "That's amazing," he breathed. Hannah felt her own throat tighten. Each ultrasound was a reminder that, yes, a real human being was growing inside her. She reached instinctively for Ryan's hand, which he promptly offered, squeezing gently. "Everything looks good," Dr. Matthews declared, pointing to the baby's profile. "You can see the development of the spine, the shape of the head, and here..." She rotated the image. "Are you interested in knowing the baby's sex today, or do you want to wait?" Hannah blinked, glancing at Ryan. They hadn't fully decided on this. She saw curiosity shining in his eyes. "I'm okay to know," she said softly. "If you are." Ryan nodded, leaning forward. "Yes, let's find out." With a few deft movements, Dr. Matthews pressed keys, adjusting the ultrasound angle. "Well, from what we can see..." She paused, pointing to the screen. "Congratulations. It appears you're having a baby girl." A girl. Hannah's grip on Ryan's hand tightened reflexively, her heart fluttering with a rush of excitement and nerves. A daughter. She pictured pink blankets, tiny bows, or maybe just a free-spirited child running around in little sneakers. Ryan exhaled a soft laugh, seemingly astonished. "A girl," he repeated. "Wow." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Dr. Matthews gave them space to absorb the news, printing out ultrasound pictures. By the time she handed the prints over, Hannah felt tears gathering. She couldn't stop staring at the tiny silhouette. "Thank you," she whispered to the doctor. They wrapped up the appointment and stepped out into the corridor, hearts thumping with a new kind of wonder. While Hannah scheduled her next visit at the front desk, Ryan lingered behind her, peeking at the pictures in his hand. She finished and turned to him, noticing a tear he hastily swiped from his cheek. She gently placed a palm on his chest. "You okay?" He nodded quickly, a bit embarrassed. "Just hit me. I'm going to have a daughter." "You're having a daughter," he added, looking into Hannah's eyes. "And she's... ours." A tender smile took over her face. I know. Feels real, doesn't it? He pulled her into a quiet hug, ignoring if the receptionist or patients were watching. For that moment, they let themselves revel in the reality of a tiny girl waiting to meet them. Eventually, they walked outside, the cool air bracing around them. Hannah exhaled a contented sigh. I have the rest of the day off. You? Ryan checked his watch. I had a meeting this afternoon, but I can reschedule. I want to celebrate. Maybe we can look at baby clothes. He chuckled lightly, an edge of nervousness. I have no idea what a little girl might need. Besides, you know, everything. Hannah found the suggestion adorable and oddly relieving. For weeks, they'd pushed aside the excitement of actually preparing for the baby's arrival, overshadowed by media pressure and their hectic schedules. Now, with the baby's gender known, it felt right to take a step toward building that future tangibly. I'd like that, she said. There's a baby boutique a few blocks away, I think. They headed down the sidewalk discussing nursery themes they'd seen online. Her leaning toward something soft and neutral, him jokingly suggesting a space-themed room because it's never too early to foster a love of science and exploration. She laughed, imagining their daughter wearing a little astronaut onesie. Reaching the boutique, they slipped inside. The scent of fresh cotton and baby lotion greeted them. Rows of tiny clothes, pastel blankets, and plush toys stretched along the walls. Hannah ran her fingers over a miniature cardigan, marveling at how small it was. We don't have to buy much yet, she said, a little shy. But we can look around. Ryan nodded, scanning the store with wide eyes, like he'd landed in an alien land of cuteness and frills. A friendly clerk approached, noticing Hannah's bump and giving them a congratulatory smile. Looking for anything in particular? Hannah glanced at Ryan. Just browsing for now, he said, voice almost awed. The clerk nodded and withdrew, leaving them to explore at their own pace. They wandered, picking up onesies, giggling at tiny socks decorated with cartoon animals. Ryan held up a small polka-dot dress. This is adorable. Is it practical? I know nothing. She grinned, imagining a chubby-cheeked baby girl wearing it. Babies grow so fast, she might only wear it once, but it's pretty cute. Impulsively, Ryan placed it over his forearm. Then we'll get it. Even if it's just for one photo or a family gathering, we can keep it as a memory. Hannah's heart fluttered at the word family. In a corner of the store, they found a display of plush animals. Hannah picked up a soft fox toy, brushing her thumb over the silky ears. Ryan glanced at it. I had a stuffed bear when I was little, he murmured. I dragged it everywhere until it practically disintegrated. Maybe she'll have a fox, Hannah suggested, smiling. Her little buddy. She turned the toy's tag over, noting it wasn't too pricey. Even so, Ryan gently took it from her hand and added it to his growing armful. She'll need a companion, he said softly. Their eyes met, and a subtle warmth passed between them, an unspoken agreement that they wanted the same for their child. Comfort, security, love. Eventually, they checked out with a small handful of items. The dress, the fox toy, a few gender-neutral onesies Hannah insisted on so they wouldn't lean too heavily into pink stereotypes. As they exited, bags in hand, Ryan's phone pinged. He pulled it out, scanning the screen. A shadow crossed his features. What is it? Hannah asked, concerned. He sighed. Crane again. Apparently he's upset I'm missing another meeting. Ephraim's trying to smooth things over, but they want me back in the office for an impromptu investor call. Disappointment flickered in Hannah, but she mustered a supportive nod. I understand. Duty calls. Ryan grimaced. I'm sorry. I really wanted to spend more time with you today. She reached over, gave his arm a comforting squeeze. We got a chance to celebrate. We'll have many more days. Go handle your business. I'll head home and keep daydreaming about nursery ideas. He hesitated, clearly torn, then exhaled. I owe you. Tonight maybe I can bring dinner to your place?" A little thrill shot through her. "That sounds nice." He kissed her cheek lightly, another gesture that once felt strange, but now came so naturally. "Take care. I'll text you." With that, he hurried off, phone already ringing. Hannah stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching him go. The swirl of the city bustled around her, but she held a small bag of baby clothes, tangible proof of the life blossoming in her belly, and of the man who was determined to be part of that life despite the chaos. She glanced down at the fox toy peeking out and couldn't help a grin. A baby girl, a sweet, mysterious little life, soon to arrive and turn everything upside down in the best possible way. With renewed lightness in her step, Hannah headed for the bus stop. She didn't know what tomorrow might bring, more press, corporate drama, or unexpected challenges, but one thing was certain. The bond she and Ryan shared, the partnership they kept nurturing, was growing strong enough to face whatever lay ahead. And soon, they'd be 3. In the days that followed, Hannah found herself daydreaming about the little girl rapidly taking shape inside her womb. At odd moments, while folding laundry or sitting with a dozing patient, her mind wandered to images of nursery decorations, of reading bedtime stories, of Ryan gingerly holding their daughter for the first time. She never thought life could change so drastically within a single year. And yet, here she was, with everything in her orbit shifting toward one tiny but momentous center. Ryan continued to be a steady presence, albeit in fragments. Some evenings he'd arrive at her apartment with takeout, balancing bags of Thai noodles or Italian pasta. They would talk about their days, her hospital routines, his relentless investor calls. Despite his frantic schedule, he'd manage a spark of enthusiasm whenever the conversation turned to baby updates. He would gently rest a hand on her belly, face alight with wonder whenever he felt a subtle flutter. Yet each meeting or phone call was capped by his business demands. An urgent text from Ephraim, an unexpected investor dinner, or a board member calling at 9 in the evening. Hannah recognized he was juggling countless pressures. Still, a small part of her worried about how sustainable it would all be once the baby arrived. She tried to trust in his promise. "No matter what, I'll be there." But sometimes, the corporate world felt like a voracious beast, eager to devour every spare minute of his life. Meanwhile, the media chatter about their relationship ebbed and flowed. A few tabloids attempted to dig deeper, but Ryan's PR team mostly held them at bay. At the hospital, a handful of co-workers occasionally teased her about her mysterious billionaire boyfriend, but she shrugged it off, concentrating on work. Some days, when exhaustion tugged at her ankles and she felt that first restless stir of the baby, she took a breath of gratitude. Regardless of gossip or unpredictable board meetings, she had this child growing healthy. That truth outshone any outside noise. One particularly chilly Sunday, Hannah's parents rolled into town, just as they'd warned they would. She'd arranged to meet them for dinner at a casual, family-friendly restaurant near her place. Ryan had insisted on joining, wanting to officially introduce himself. Though Hannah's nerves were off the charts, her parents were reserved, especially her father, and Ryan was a kind of big personality. She knew avoiding the introduction any longer would serve no purpose. She arrived first, choosing a booth in the back corner for a bit of privacy. She wore a sweater that showed her bump proudly. After all, there was no point hiding it now. Her parents soon walked in, smiling warmly as they spotted her. Her mother, a petite woman with gentle eyes, enveloped Hannah in a hug, murmuring, "Look at you, all glowing." Her father, taller and stoic, gently placed a hand on Hannah's shoulder in greeting. She caught the slight quake in his gaze, probably the realization that his daughter was soon to be a mother. They settled in, chatting about her health, hospital stories, and small updates from back home. Eventually, the door at the front of the restaurant swung open, and Hannah spied Ryan stepping in, scanning for her. Her stomach knotted with anticipation. He wore a casual button-down and a respectful smile as he approached the table. Hannah did the introductions. "Mom, Dad, this is Ryan Thompson." She purposefully avoided the typical "my boyfriend" label, uncertain if it fit neatly into their unconventional relationship, but that was hardly the point. Her parents eyed Ryan with polite curiosity. Ryan extended a hand to her father. "Mr. Williams, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir." Hannah's father eyed him briefly, the corners of his mouth tight, before shaking hands. "I've heard a lot about you," he said in a neutral tone. "News travels quickly." Hannah's mother chimed in with more warmth. "It's lovely to meet you, Ryan. We're excited to hear about how you two have been managing everything." She cast a fond glance at Hannah's belly. The server appeared, distributing menus and taking drink orders, briefly diffusing the tension. Hannah noticed Ryan's slight stiffness. He was used to high-stakes boardrooms, but meeting a girlfriend's parents was a different kind of test. She squeezed his arm under the table as if to say, "It's okay, I'm here." They small-talked for a while. Her father asked polite but pointed questions about Ryan's company, his accident, and how he was balancing a hectic career with the imminent responsibilities of fatherhood. Ryan answered steadily, detailing how he planned to scale back some travel and rely on a strong management team. Hannah's mother inquired if Hannah would keep working as a nurse after giving birth. Hannah admitted she wanted to, at least part-time, once the baby was a few months old, maybe even shift into a less physically demanding role if necessary. Ryan nodded in support. Over plates of grilled salmon and warm bread rolls, the conversation meandered. Her parents occasionally exchanged looks, gauging Ryan's sincerity, no doubt. Hannah sensed her father's protective instincts, especially whenever the mention of media attention or investors arose. But Ryan remained calm, acknowledging the challenges, reassuring them both that he wasn't going anywhere. At one point, her mother reached across the table to take Hannah's hand. "I know this isn't what you might have envisioned, honey. Getting all this attention, balancing such different worlds. But if you're happy..." Her eyes flitted to Ryan, giving a tentative smile. "Then we want to be happy for you." Hannah felt a rush of relief. "Thank you. We're figuring it out together." She turned a soft gaze toward Ryan, who returned it with a small but genuine grin. As they finished dessert, her father cleared his throat, fixing Ryan with a steady gaze. "You'll forgive me for being frank. My daughter's happiness and her safety are everything to me. I know you've got a lot on your plate, son, but this baby isn't just another project. It's a life. I trust you understand that." Ryan straightened, meeting Mr. Williams's eyes without flinching. "I do," he said solemnly. "I almost lost my life in that accident. It changed my perspective. The baby isn't an afterthought for me, she's my priority, and I promise I'll never let Hannah shoulder this alone." Hannah's throat tightened with emotion. It was exactly the sort of vow her father needed to hear, and from the way he finally relaxed a fraction, she could tell it struck home. They parted outside the restaurant with hugs and farewells. Her mother kissed her cheek, whispering, "We'll visit again before we leave town, sweetheart. You take care." Her father nodded, gripping Ryan's hand again. "Thank you for supper," Mr. Williams said quietly, "and for your honesty." Then they headed off to their hotel, leaving Hannah and Ryan alone on the sidewalk. The city lights gleamed in a passing drizzle, reflecting in puddles by the curb. Hannah linked her arm through Ryan's. "You did great," she murmured, relieved. "They're tough, but they mean well." He exhaled, a half-laugh escaping. "I was bracing for more hostility, honestly, but they seem like kind people." She nodded, gazing at the shimmering street. "Thank you for handling their concerns. My dad's not big on words, but you earned his respect tonight." They strolled a few blocks in comfortable silence, letting the mild drizzle mist their jackets. Eventually, they stopped at her apartment building, the dim yellow lobby light flickering through the glass doors. Ryan cleared his throat. I should probably head back to finalize some investor documents. But are you okay? She turned, searching his face. I'm fine. Everything feels better, actually, knowing my parents see us together like this. He nodded, lifting a hand to softly brush her cheek. The intimacy felt natural now. Let's celebrate next week, he said, voice quiet. We can do something for just us. No business, no media, no parents. Maybe a simple evening in. A warm glow filled her chest. I'd like that. She hesitated, then asked, Would you come in for a bit? Or do you really have to run? Ryan sighed, genuine regret in his eyes. I'd love to, but Crane is in the office tonight waiting on my call. I'm sorry. She mustered a small smile, tamping down the disappointment. It's okay. Go be the boss. He gave her a gentle kiss on the forehead, lingering there for a heartbeat. I'll call you tomorrow, all right? Mm-hmm. She watched him stride away, phone already buzzing. The swirl of obligations tugged him from every angle. But the memory of how he'd faced her father's questioning with calm determination made her heart flutter. He might be busy, but he was earnest. Inside her apartment, she swapped her damp jacket for slippers, then settled on the futon. Her phone beeped with a message from her mom, a simple thumbs-up emoji, likely signifying approval. She chuckled, thumbs flicking across the screen. Glad you liked him. Love you both. The response came instantly. He's a keeper. Take good care of each other. Love you. Hannah set the phone aside, leaning back with a soft exhale. The hush of the room pressed on her ears, a stark contrast to the bustling restaurant, the swirl of family introductions. The tension and relief mingled in every exchange. She rested a hand on her belly, trying to imagine how she'd share these stories with her daughter one day. We were scared. We were busy, and we lived in different worlds, she might say, but we found our way to each other to make a life for you. A tired contentment spread through her. Yes, life still brimmed with unknowns. How public scrutiny would intensify when the baby was born. How she and Ryan would balance newborn chaos with his corporate expansions. How her own nursing shifts would fit into the mix. But tonight's dinner had shown her that their bond wasn't just for show. Ryan stood by her side, unwavering under her father's scrutiny, and her parents, though cautious, extended their blessing. A new, unspoken confidence settled in her heart. Her father's final handshake seemed to say, We'll hold you to your promise, but we trust you. And Hannah realized she trusted Ryan too. She closed her eyes, letting the day's warmth envelop her. Their baby girl was steadily growing, and around her an entire circle of people, parents, soon-to-be grandparents, and a father determined to protect them, was gathering. For the first time, Hannah let herself truly hope that no matter what storms lay ahead, this family, hers, was forging itself with quiet strength and unwavering love. 2 months later, the city was in the grip of winter's chill. Sidewalks dusted with frost, breath clouding in the icy air. But inside Hannah's small apartment, warmth radiated from every corner. The nursery area, her once empty corner, had transformed into a soft haven of pastel colors and baby supplies. A second-hand crib gleamed with fresh polish, heaped with plush blankets. A rocking chair stood near the window, perfect for late-night feedings, and on a small shelf by the wall rested the fox plush that she and Ryan had purchased during that memorable day at the boutique. Each time Hannah glanced at it, her heart performed a little leap, recalling how they'd marveled at the idea of dressing their daughter and holding her in just a few months' time. Those months had flown by. Hannah's belly now carried a decisive curve, her walk transforming into the gentle sway so common in the final trimester. Her colleagues at the hospital teased her about waddling, and she took their ribbing in good humor, well aware that the last stretch of pregnancy demanded an unhurried grace. Meanwhile, Ryan juggled the final phases of a major corporate expansion. Despite the flurry of board meetings and investor negotiations, he insisted on driving her to her checkups when possible, or at least calling in to hear the doctor's updates if he was traveling. One blustery morning, Hannah woke up earlier than usual, an odd tension twining across her lower abdomen. At first, she brushed it off as normal third trimester discomfort, but as she rose to make decaf coffee, she realized the tension came in waves, tightening and then easing. A flutter of excitement touched her chest. Could this be the beginning of labor? She was just shy of her due date. It wasn't impossible. She tried not to jump to conclusions, though. She'd seen false alarms among new mothers in the emergency ward. "It might just be Braxton Hicks," she murmured, rubbing slow circles on her belly. The baby gave a little shift, as if acknowledging her. Still, a quiet thrill lingered. She decided to time the waves, just in case. By mid-morning, the contractions felt stronger and had begun to form a more regular pattern. Every 10 minutes or so she paused whatever she was doing, folding towels, tidying the nursery, to breathe through them. She called the hospital's maternity desk, and the on-call nurse advised her to monitor for an hour or two more, then come in if they intensified. Hannah nodded, heart pounding. She texted Ryan, "I think it might be starting. Having contractions. They're mild, 10 minutes apart. Not sure yet, but keep your phone close." 15 minutes later, her phone rang. Ryan's voice tumbled out in a rush of worry and excitement. "Hannah, are you okay? I'm leaving the office now. Should I pick you up or meet you at the hospital?" She inhaled, trying to stay calm. "Let's not panic. They're still spaced out. But maybe we can wait together, see if they speed up. I wouldn't mind the company." "On my way," Ryan promised. She could hear him already grabbing his keys. "Text me if anything changes." Hannah leaned against the kitchen counter, letting out a slow exhale. It was happening. Possibly. She'd been preparing for this moment ever since she'd found out about the pregnancy, but now that the day seemed to be upon her, a swirl of anticipation and nerves jostled inside her head. Within half an hour, Ryan arrived. The moment she opened her door, a burst of cold air followed him inside, along with the faint smell of aftershave and winter wind. He carried a small suitcase. He'd preemptively packed some essentials for himself in case they had to rush to the hospital. "How are you feeling?" he asked, setting his bag down and gently cupping her cheeks to peer into her eyes. She mustered a grin, though another contraction gripped her. "I'm okay," she managed. "They're getting a bit stronger, maybe 8 or 9 minutes apart now." He slid an arm around her for support. "Let's sit you down. Breathe." She nodded, letting him guide her to the sofa. They spent the next hour practicing the birthing class techniques, steady inhales, slow exhales, focusing on letting each wave of pain pass. Ryan offered sips of water, rubbed her back, and occasionally joked lightly to keep her spirits up. Despite the tension, Hannah felt an incredible comfort in his presence. His wide-eyed concern mingled with a determined calm. By noon, the contractions settled into a regular pattern about 5 or 6 minutes apart, and a new layer of intensity rolled through them. She placed a call to the hospital once more. "Yes," the nurse said. "Time to come in. We'll have a room ready." Ryan fetched Hannah's hospital bag, the one she'd pre-packed weeks ago with comfortable clothes, slippers, and basic toiletries. Together they navigated the short trip out to his car. The sky loomed gray, but the roads were thankfully clear. Each bump or turn in the road made Hannah's breath hitch, but she clutched Ryan's hand, focusing on the steady press of his fingers. They arrived at the hospital's maternity ward, where a nurse quickly ushered them into a labor and delivery room. The bright overhead lights and antiseptic scent brought a rush of memory. Hannah worked here, after all, though usually as staff, not as a patient. Now she felt the role reversed in the starkest way possible. A nurse took her vitals, asked her questions, hooked her to monitors. Before long, Dr. Matthews appeared, offering a warm smile. "Hannah, we meet again but this time on the other side of the chart. She gave Ryan a nod too. "You're about 4 centimeters dilated," she explained after checking. "Contractions look good and strong. We'll watch your progress. You're definitely in active labor." Hannah let out a mix of relief and trepidation. This was real. The mild waves of earlier blossomed into deeper surges, forcing her to grip Ryan's hand with each new contraction. He stood by her side, occasionally murmuring encouragement. She sensed his nerves, especially the first time she let out a sharp gasp of pain, but he stayed present, wiping her brow with a cool cloth and whispering, "You're doing great." Hours passed in a blur of breathing exercises, position changes, and the rhythmic beep of monitors. Hannah's world shrank to the bed, the swirl of medical staff checking in, and Ryan's supportive presence. She recalled every technique from her birthing classes, slow exhales, visualizing calmer waves, and yet no textbook description truly captured the magnitude of labor's force. At one point, exhaustion threatened to swallow her. She closed her eyes between contractions, leaning heavily on Ryan's arm. A nurse suggested an epidural if the pain was overwhelming. Hannah debated, then nodded, deciding her body needed some relief. The anesthesiologist arrived, administering it carefully. Soon, a measure of calm returned, easing the harshest edges of each contraction. Ryan brushed a kiss against her temple. "Proud of you," he murmured. She squeezed his hand, voice rasping a quiet, "Thank you." Late into the evening, she'd lost track of exact hours, Dr. Matthews returned. "You're at about 9 centimeters, she told Hannah, glancing at the printout of contractions. "You're nearly there, just a little longer." A hush fell as everyone readied for the final stage. Hannah's parents, alerted by a text, sat in the waiting area. She felt a pang that her mother couldn't be beside her, but hospital policy limited the room to essential persons. She needed Ryan more than anyone in that moment, and indeed, as midnight approached, Dr. Matthews did one last check. 10 centimeters. Time to push, Hannah. Let's bring your baby girl into the world." A sudden swirl of adrenaline pulsed through her. Ryan adjusted his stance, pressing a supportive hand behind her back. Her heart pounded. She mustered strength from reserves she never knew she had. At Dr. Matthews's count, Hannah pushed, sweat beading across her forehead, tears gathering as she fought the burning pressure. Ryan's voice was a steady anchor. "You've got this," he repeated, breath trembling with emotion. Contraction after contraction, push after push, Hannah poured every ounce of will into delivering their daughter. The world narrowed into a crucible of effort and raw determination. Finally, after one especially fierce push, an elated cry from the doctor broke the tension. "She's here!" A sharp, sweet wail filled the room. The swirl of relief and wonder brought fresh tears to Hannah's cheeks. Dr. Matthews lifted the baby, an impossibly small bundle, and handed her quickly to a nurse to check vitals, clamp the cord. Ryan's face crumpled with awe at the first sight of his daughter, pink-skinned, wriggling, voice proclaiming her arrival with strong cries. Moments later, they placed the baby against Hannah's chest. She felt the tiny, squirming warmth, and the wave of emotion nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. The baby quieted, nestling closer, as if recognizing the steady beat of Hannah's heart. Ryan leaned in, tears shining in his eyes. He pressed a trembling kiss to Hannah's forehead. She's perfect," he whispered. Hannah could only nod, overwhelmed by love and exhaustion. In the minutes that followed, the medical team handled postpartum details, delivering the placenta, ensuring Hannah was stable. Ryan hovered protectively, eyes darting between Hannah's face and their newborn, as if afraid to miss a single moment. Eventually, with everything confirmed well, Dr. Matthews offered them a private grin. "Congratulations, you two. I'll give you some time together." The staff quietly dispersed, leaving only a nurse or two finishing checks. Hannah gazed down at her daughter, dark hair matted against her tiny skull, eyes closed, small mouth opening occasionally. She looked fragile and fierce all at once, a brand new life that had changed everything. Ryan delicately touched the baby's wispy hair, still fighting tears. "Hi there," he murmured, voice thick. "I'm your dad." Hannah's throat constricted with overwhelming emotion. She lifted her gaze to meet Ryan's. "We did it," she said, voice raw. "She's here." He nodded, gently stroking the baby's cheek. "And she's beautiful," he whispered, "just like her mom." They stayed like that for an eternity, or so it felt, simply absorbing the miracle in their arms. Eventually, a nurse gave a soft knock and stepped in with warm blankets, preparing to measure and weigh the baby. Hannah allowed it, though she hated parting with the baby's closeness even for a moment. Ryan hovered, capturing each detail on his phone, her weight, her length, the little footprint pressed onto a birth record. He seemed enthralled by every squeak and squirm. When the baby returned to Hannah's arms, carefully wrapped in a soft hospital blanket, she whispered, "Do we have a name?" They'd discussed a few possibilities but hadn't made a final decision. Ryan exhaled, recalling the short list they'd drawn up, each name significant. Hannah gave a tentative smile. "What about Amelia?" she asked. It had lingered in her mind for days, symbolizing both strength and a sense of adventure. "We never pinned it down, but it feels right somehow." Ryan tested the name softly. "Amelia Thompson." He glanced at Hannah with shining eyes, and she nodded, a fierce wave of love surging through her. Yes, that was their daughter's name. At last, with Amelia nestled in Hannah's arms, Ryan slipped out briefly to share the news with Hannah's parents in the waiting area. They rushed in minutes later, tears in her mom's eyes as she beheld her granddaughter. Her father's silent joy spoke volumes. He gently patted Amelia's blanket, eyes brimming with pride. The hush in the room was broken only by Amelia's soft coos and the swirl of happy murmurs. Eventually, night gave way to early morning, the hospital corridor still quiet except for the occasional squeak of a cart. Hannah felt bone-tired, yet buoyed by a sense of peace she'd never known. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, hand resting lightly on Amelia's sleeping form. He leaned down to whisper in Hannah's ear, "Thank you for trusting me, for letting me be part of this. I love you both, more than I can say." She found his hand and intertwined their fingers. "I love you too. We have a lot to figure out, but this is where it all begins." His gaze drifted to Amelia's downy head. "She's our second chance at everything," he murmured. "I'm not going to waste it." Hannah nodded, heart full. Yes, fatherhood wouldn't be easy, nor would balancing her own career and personal life. The press might swirl again. The demands of Ryan's board might surge. But in this softly lit hospital room, cradling their newborn daughter, all that noise faded into the background. They had each other, and they had Amelia. A new family, formed by fate in the quiet wards of a hospital, and determined to grow stronger with every sunrise. The hours slipped past. The first rays of dawn stole through the window, illuminating the three of them in a pale gold glow. Hannah closed her eyes, drifting toward a much-needed sleep, her hand still clasped with Ryan's, Amelia's gentle breathing fluttering against her chest. Outside, the city stirred to life, unaware that within these walls a small miracle had taken place. But to Hannah and Ryan, the world had completely changed. Their future began here, in the hush of a hospital room, bound by love that transcended near-death accidents and boardroom battles, anchored by the tiny heartbeat that united them in a purpose far greater than either had ever known. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.